Hello to our freaky family. I'm Michelle.
And I'm Kandi.
And this is Sips of Crime.
Welcome back, everybody.
Hello.
Hope you enjoyed the last episode as much as you could.
That was a rough one.
It was. So what have you been up to?
Nothing. I've just been trying to figure out all of our birthday plans because...
Yes, I'm so excited.
That is coming up. It's right around the corner. If you guys are long-term listeners, you guys know that Kandi and I, we celebrate our birthdays together every single year, and we go pretty big. We go hard.
We do. Or, if we don't go hard, we do like a vineyard hopping day.
Yes, a vineyard day is always a good...
At the end of June and the end of July. Mm-hmm. But we are... I can't say that we're... Well, no, we're not combining it this year.
No.
We are doing a little big for Michelle's.
Yep.
And we're doing a little big for mine.
Yep.
But we're going to have a trip.
Yeah, we're going on another trip. We decided that we were going to head out to Asheville for my birthday.
Yes.
At the beginning of June. So we will possibly be giving you guys some Asheville murders, Asheville crimes.
Are we still getting matching tattoos?
Of course, yes.
Yes.
We've decided that we are going to start travel tattoos. That's going to be a big thing for us. We're super excited. We've decided on a hot mom summer. It's happening. We're doing a hot mom summer, and that's
Why
it.
shouldn't we?
We absolutely should do that, and we hope that you guys will join us. We're not saying that you guys have to, drink, and we're not saying that you guys have to get matching tattoos with your best friend.
But you act like hot moms if you're moms, or if you're just women.
Whatever
you're
hot
women.
Whatever hot mom summer means to you.
And if you're a dude and you feel good, you're
hot dad summer.
Yeah.
I'm down with a hot dad summer. Whatever makes you feel good, whatever makes you happy, that's what we're living in right now. That's what we're doing. We're manifesting it, and it's going to happen. So we've got some fun trips planned. We've got some fun friendship stuff going on, and we're just super excited to see what this summer holds. Unfortunately, though, before we get into fun summer, hot mom summer, all that good stuff, we do have to bring you guys a crime episode. It's what we do. It's what you guys are here for. You guys know what you signed up for. So, we don't have a whole lot of catching up to do. So,
no, we don't.
Other than that, just keep a lookout for the exciting birthday adventures coming up, and we'll open up some wine.
So, we are going to do a wonderful white, almost 0% alcohol.
We've been talking about doing a non-alcoholic wine for so long, and I guess we just didn't quite get there with this almost non-alcoholic.
But we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. But it's a little light green bottle. It's almost 0. It's 0.5%. It says this exciting beverage is made from top hand-picked grapes that are used to produce a vibrant, high-quality wine. Using the latest advanced technology in winemaking, the alcohol is then removed from the wine. The result is a soft, tropical, and well-balanced drink for every occasion without the alcohol restricting your enjoyment. Enjoy as a flavorful drink or like summer fare, salads, or seafood.
Also, I just want to stop here for just a second. This wine is a little different than the ones that we normally do as well because it actually has a nutrition label on the back of it. So it specifically tells you that a serving size of this wine is 12 fluid ounces, and that the container holds 2 servings. A normal...
This is not her whole 2 servings. That is
a 12 ounce...
3.5, 4.
Yeah, a 12 ounce... That is not a normal serving of wine. Your standard glass of wine is either a 4 to 5 ounce pour. And that's what you're going to get at a restaurant. That is what your serving size needs to be. But on this one, it does have a nutritional label, and it states 12 fluid ounces is 114 calories.
You got 23 carbs.
Yeah, some sodium. I mean, so like I said...
some calcium in there.
There you go.
Some potassium.
3 grams of protein. Hello. So...
Let's see.
We're going to try it out.
Absolutely not.
No.
Absolutely not.
No, that is not good. That's not good.
That is terrible.
Mm-mm. Oh, 0 stars.
Oh, yeah. I can't even...
Oh, I wanted to like that so much. I wanted to like that. I did. That doesn't even...
I can't even put that in a white category. I'm not even taking another sip of it. The smell is terrible. The taste is gross. It literally just made me gag.
Oh, I just took another sip. Hoping. You know, the second sip is always the best. That's what I say.
No, it's not.
I
can't even classify that as like a Moscato, a Zinfandel,
that doesn't fall under
nothing. It falls under by itself. Don't do it.
Oh no. No, that was really bad. So that didn't work out as planned.
So we don't know how many more almost zero alcohols we're gonna do.
Oh God, is that the name of the company?
No, it's Wonderful White.
Something tells me that this wine tastes a lot like your story.
We had a suggestion by someone that you told me about, Jennifer Hupp.
You, Jennifer, I have to give it to you because you have tagged us in a ton of stories since you've sent us this story, and I like you. I just want to tell you that I'm your fan. Jennifer, you are a twisted individual.
After this story, yes, she is.
And I just hope that we can give you what you wanted.
I hope so, because, Jennifer, if you would not have suggested this story, I would have stopped.
There has been a handful of times where we have texted each other and we're like, hey, I'm doing this person, I'm going to start the research. And then a few hours later, we will text each other and be like, nope, just kidding. We're not doing this. This is not our cup of tea. But because you wanted it so badly.
And you enjoy my accent, I am going to give it to you.
She's going to give it to you so you can listen to that beautiful accent all episode long.
But I'm going to go ahead and pre-warn that this case is very, very rough. It does deal with children. It does deal with cannibalism.
Gosh, just the whole 9 yards, aren't we?
Oh, heck yeah.
Are you, like, trying not to cuss a whole lot here recently?
Yeah,
I'm just wondering, because the last episode, you kept trying to fix yourself.
Yes, I'm trying not to.
Okay.
But
I can't tell you that I'm going to be supportive of that.
Well, after this story, I can't promise you anything. So, grab a glass.
But not that one. Grab a friend.
Let's dive in. So, Albert Fish was born in Washington, D.C. on May 19th, 1870, as Hamilton Fish to Randall and Ellen Fish. Randall was an American of the English ancestry, and Ellen was Scottish-Irish American. Randall was 43 years older than Ellen, and was 75 at the time of Albert's birth.
Wow.
75! Whew. That made Ellen 32. I could not imagine being married to a 75-year-old right now.
No, nor could I imagine having a child at 32. Now that's not near as odd as it was back in this day.
Well, that's 1870.
Well, that's what I was just getting ready to say. I mean, even I, in this day and age, I had my child when I was 25, I think, and they specifically told me that anything over 30 years was considered a geriatric pregnancy.
That's crazy.
Y'all, 30 years old is not geriatric. And I want to point out that if you are 30-something years old and you want to have a baby, you should do it. Don't listen to those doctors because they are going to tell you all of these terrible things. But my husband's mother was 32, I think, when she gave birth to my husband.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so later in life. But I mean, back in that day, you were old. Like, I mean, geriatric pregnancy, y'all. That's a thing. And they still use that term today.
When I was younger and my mom was like, oh my God, I was 9 or 10. And she's like, I'm going to be 30. And it was like, terrible. It was terrible to turn 30. Yeah. I don't feel that bad.
I felt great when I turned to 30.
Now, when I turn 50.
We'll talk then.
Yeah.
We'll check back in on the podcast.
We might have
Could you imagine us being 50 years old doing this podcast?
If we're being supported, I'd be so down with it.
If you guys stick with us, we'll stick with you.
You can hear about our entire life for the next 20 years. And then God only knows when our kids are grown what this is going to hold.
Oh my gosh, we're going to have our kids on one day as guests.
Oh, God. I apologize in advance for my son because God only knows.
I think my daughter would be a fantastic guest on
She
this
would.
podcast.
She is very mature for her age.
It's not about maturity at all. She's just witty.
She is. She is hilarious.
She's so funny. Okay, so she was a little older in life, considered back in that day way too old to be having kids, and married to a 70-something-year-old.
She was 32, married to a 75-year-old. Whew! That's your grandpa.
Yeah.
Almost. Anyway. Albert was the youngest child and had 3 living siblings. It was Walter, Annie, and Edwin. He wished to be known as Albert, which was after a dead sibling, and to escape the nickname he had obtained later on that they called him Ham and Eggs. I guess because Hamilton and fish.
I would want to escape that too. So he had a sibling that passed away named Albert?
Yeah, they didn't really talk about it.
Right.
So there was nothing for me to find out
But that's
about
what
it.
he wanted to be known as.
He wanted to be known as Albert Fish.
Okay.
Albert's family had a history of mental illness. His uncle had mania. One of his brothers was confined in a state mental hospital. His paternal half-brother, named Lafayette, suffered from schizophrenia. And his sister was diagnosed with mental affliction.
Good Lord, so the kid had no chance.
3 other relatives were diagnosed with mental illness, and his mother had hearing and or visual hallucinations.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so prepare you for this.
Lots of mental illness going on in this family.
Albert's father, a fertilizer manufacturer and former riverboat captain, suffered a fatal heart attack at the Baltimore and Potomac Railroad Station in 1875. Cemetery records show that he was buried on October 19th in grave R96/89.
Oh, good Lord.
Whatever that means is exactly what I put.
I was about to say, is that like a plot number?
I guess so. Maybe, I'm wondering if, like, by records, which I could ask my aunt because she works with cemeteries and stuff, but I'm wondering if, like, maybe they had their, like, name and then had whatever plot they have, like...
Like a pre-marker.
Yeah.
Gotcha, okay.
Or, like, if it was, like, John Doe, who is buried and you don't know who it is at this marker.
Yeah, I also feel like back in the day, a lot of people made a lot more preparations for their funerals than we do now. Like, maybe that's just a generational thing for me, but, like... And I'm also young, but, like, as of right now, like, my parents, I mean, they have, like, a will and testament and stuff like that, but, like, I don't have any, like, information as to what...
I don't have plots already bought.
Exactly.
Like
and I feel like my grandparents, like, had plots, like, already paid for, ready to go. They made payments on these things, like, years before, and I was young, so you know that they started really early.
Yeah, I'm not doing all that.
Oh, gosh. It just seems
that
morbid.
Just makes me sad.
To try to, like, get all of that stuff. But, I mean, I guess, okay, regardless, we're going on tangents. He had a plot ready to go. That's what it read.
That's where he was buried at. When his father passed away, Albert's mother ended up putting him into St. John's Orphanage in Washington.
What?
Yep.
So Dad passed away, and she's like, "Nope, can't handle these kids. You guys are going into the system."
Apparently, which we'll go into that she couldn't afford to keep him at home. Like, she didn't have a job, and
that makes sense, especially for the time frame. Okay,
right.
Okay, I'm with you.
Well, while he was in there, he was frequently abused physically. And weird thing is that he actually began to enjoy the physical pain that the beatings brought. Which is honestly really sad to read or even say. Like,
yeah, I mean, you've endured so much to the point to where you just had to find some sort of pleasure in it.
Right. Well, by 1880, Albert's mother was able to secure a government job and removed Albert from St. John's. In 1882, at the age of 12, he began a relationship with a telegraph boy. You know, like the people that bring the telegraphs.
The fuck is a telegraph?
You don't know what a telegraph is?
Is it like a newspaper?
It's like someone, like, say, I needed to get a message to you quickly, and...
Oh, like a relay service. Like,
okay.
Yeah.
And somebody would come and be like,
and deliver the message.
Yes,
gotcha.
Yes.
Okay, yes.
So, this boy introduced Albert to practices of, like, drinking urine and eating feces.
The fuck for?
I don't know, but they apparently have actual names, which I'm not even going to try to pronounce.
Okay.
Because they're really long. Albert began visiting public baths where he would watch other boys undress, spending a great portion of his time on the weekends doing this. Throughout his life, he would write obscene letters to women whose names he obtained from classified advertising or matrimonial agencies.
So, like, the women were putting their information out there trying to find a husband, and they got Albert Fish at age 12?
Yep. Well, he might have been 14 by now.
Okay.
No, he was 12. But either way, he was sending them letters.
Oh, Lord.
By 1890, Albert, who's now 20 years old, he moves to New York City, where he started engaging in male prostitution.
He was the male prostitute?
He began molesting and raping boys, mostly younger than 6 years old. Albert's mother arranged a marriage for him with Anna Mary Hoffman, who was 9 years younger than him. They went on to have 6 children: Albert, Anna, Gertrude, Eugene, John, and Henry. In 1903, Albert was arrested for grand larceny. He was convicted and incarcerated in Sing Sing. Now that's 1903. Albert later recounted on the incident in which a male lover took him to a wax museum where he was fascinated by a dissection of human penis. Eventually, he became obsessed with sexual mutilation. Several years later, around 1910, Albert was working in Wilmington, Delaware, when he met 19-year-old Thomas Keaton. He took Thomas to where he was staying, and the two began a relationship. It's unclear whether or not Albert forced Thomas to do these things, but the confession implies that Thomas was intellectually disabled. After 10 days, Albert took Thomas to an old farmhouse where he tortured him over a period of 2 weeks. Albert eventually tied Thomas up and cut off half of his penis. Quote, "I shall never forget his scream or the look he gave me," unquote. He originally intended to kill Thomas, cut up his body, and take it home, but he feared that the hot weather would draw attention to him, so instead, Albert poured peroxide over the wound, wrapped it in Vaseline, covered it in a handkerchief, left a $10 bill, and kissed Thomas goodbye, and then left. Quote, "I took the first train I could get back home. Never heard from him or tried to find him."
So, this is putting off a lot of, like, Dahmer vibes.
7 years later, in January of 1917, Albert's wife left him for the handyman that had boarded with the family, named John Strobe. Albert then had to raise his children as a single parent. After his arrest, Albert told the newspaper that when his wife left him, she took nearly every possession the family owned. Albert began having auditory hallucinations, once wrapping himself in carpet, saying that he was following the instructions of John the Apostle. It was also about this time that Albert began to self-harm by embedding needles into his groin and abdomen. After his arrest, x-rays showed that Albert had at least 29 needles lodged in his pelvic area.
They just stayed there?
Yes, they did. As I'm showing her a x-ray of the needles in his pelvic area.
So he just stuck them in there?
Yeah. This was him about this time.
He's a handsome boy.
It's not terrible.
So, okay, wait a minute. So he was arrested for what he did to this kid?
No, not yet.
Why was he arrested here?
Because he was arrested for the larceny and stuff. Like, he was constantly in and out of jail.
Oh, okay. So this is like just something that happens on a normal basis.
Yes,
he's always
he's
being
arrested
for something.
Yes, but it's not for what you think.
Oh my God.
He also hit himself repeatedly with a nail-studded paddle and inserted wool doused with lighter fluid into his anus and set it on fire. Albert was never thought to have physically abused or attacked his children, but he did encourage them and their friends to paddle his butt with the same nail-studded paddle he used to abuse himself.
His own butt?
Yep.
So he had his kids spanking him and his kids' friends.
With a nail-studded paddle.
Perfect.
Yeah. Around 1919, Albert stabbed an intellectually disabled boy in Georgetown. He always chose people who were either mentally disabled or African American as his victims, later explaining that he assumed these people would not be missed if killed. Albert later claimed to have occasionally paid boys to secure other children for him. Albert tortured, mutilated, and murdered young children with his, quote, implements of hell, unquote, which included a meat cleaver, a butcher's knife, and a small handsaw. On July 11th, 1924, Albert found 8-year-old Beatrice Kill playing alone on her parents' farm in Staten Island, New York. He offered her money to come and help him look for rhubarb. She was about to leave the farm with him when her mother came chasing him away. Albert left, but then returned to the barn where he was going to try to go to sleep. But he was discovered by Beatrice's father and was forced to leave. During this time, Albert was suffering from psychosis and felt that God was commanding him to torture and sexually mutilate children. Albert attempted his implements of hell on a child he had been molesting named Cyril Quinn. Quinn and his friend were playing ball on the sidewalk when Albert proceeded to ask them if they had eaten lunch. When they replied that they had not, Albert invited them to his apartment for sandwiches. While the two boys were wrestling on Albert's bed, they dislodged his mattress, and underneath they found his knife, handsaw, and the meat cleaver. Of course, the boys became scared and ran out of the apartment.
I would have too.
Despite being still married to his previous wife, Albert married Estella Wilcox on February 6th of 1930 in Waterloo, New York. But then they divorced only a week later. Later on, so he divorced in February. Following May, Albert was arrested for sending an obscene letter to a woman who answered an ad for a maid services. Following that arrest, and another in 1931, he was sent to Bellevue Hospital for observation. Well, that was in 1930, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, back on May 25th of 1928, Albert had saw a classified advertisement in the Sunday edition of the New York World that read, "Young man, 18, wishes position in country. Edward Budd, 406 West 15th Street." On May 28th, Albert, who is now 58 years old, went and visited the Budd family in Manhattan under the pretense of hiring Edward. He later confessed that he planned to tie Edward up, mutilate him, and leave him to bleed to death. Albert introduced himself as Frank Howard, a farmer from Farmingdale, New York. He promised Edward to hire him and his friend Willie and said he would send for them in a few days. Albert failed to show but sent a telegram to Edward and his family apologizing and set a later date. When Albert returned, he met Edward's younger sister, Grace Budd, who was 10 years old. He apparently shifted his intentions towards Grace and quickly made up a story about having to attend his niece's birthday party. He convinced the parents of Grace to let her accompany him to the party that evening. After giving the okay, Albert actually took Grace to an abandoned house he had previously picked out to use, to murder his next victim, which was supposed to be Edward, but now it's his younger sister, which was Wisteria Cottage at 359 Mountain Road, located at East Irvington neighborhood of Irvington, New York. There he murdered and ate Grace.
And ate.
Police arrested 60-year-old Superintendent Charles Edward Pope on September 5th of 1930 as a suspect in Grace's disappearance. He was accused by his estranged wife and spent 108 days in jail between his arrest and trial on December 12th, 1930.
So they arrested somebody else for
Yep.
it? Oh my gosh.
But he was found not guilty.
Good.
In November of 1934, an anonymous letter was sent to Grace's parents, which ultimately led the police to believe Albert was responsible. Mrs. Budd was illiterate herself and could not read the letter, so she had her son read it to her. The letter reads,
Oh, God.
"My dear Mrs. Budd, in 1894, a friend of mine shipped a deckhand on the steamer Tacoma, Captain John Davis. They sailed from San Francisco to Hong Kong, China. On arriving there, he and 2 others went ashore to get drunk. When they returned to the boat, it was gone. At this time, there's a famine in China, meat of any kind from $1 to $3 per pound. So great was the suffering among the very poor that all children 12 and under were sold to the butchers to be cut up and sold for food in order to keep others from starving. A boy or girl under 14 was not safe in the street. You could go to any shop and ask for steak, chops, or stew meat. Part of the naked body of the boy or girl could be brought out and just what you want cut from it. A boy or girl's behind, which is the sweetest part of the body and sold as veal cutlet, was bought at the highest price. John stayed there so long he acquired a taste for human flesh. On his return to New York, he stole 2 boys, one 7 and 11, took them to his home, stripped them naked, and tied them in a closet, then burned everything they had. Several times every day and night he spanked them, tortured them, to make their meat good and tender. First he killed the 11-year-old boy because he had the fattest ass and of course the most meat on it. Every part of the body was cooked and eaten except head, bones, and guts. He was roasted in the oven, boiled, broiled, fried, stewed. The little boy was next and went the same way. At this time I was living on 409 East 100th Street, right near the right rear side. He told me so often how human flesh was, I made up my mind to taste it. On Sunday, June 3rd, 1928, I called you at 406 West 15th Street. Brought you a pot of cheese strawberries. We had lunch. Grace sat in my lap and kissed me. I made up my mind to eat her. On the pretense of taking her to a party, you said yes, she could go. I took her to an empty house in Westchester I had already picked out. When we got there, I told her to remain outside. She picked wildflowers. I went upstairs and stripped all my clothes off. I knew if I did, I would not get her blood on them. When all was ready, I went to the window and called her. Then I hid in the closet until she was in the room. When she saw me naked, she began to cry and tried to run down the stairs. I grabbed her, and she said she would tell her mama. First, I stripped her naked. How she did kick, bite, and scratch. I choked her to death, then cut her in small pieces so I could take meat to my rooms, cook, and eat it. How sweet and tender her little ass was roasted in the oven. It took me 9 days to eat her entire body. I did not fuck her, though. I could have, had I wished. She died a virgin. He wrote that to her family.
I don't have words. I'm a little concerned and confused at this point too. The letter is saying things about people being hungry and not having enough meat and food, and so they're deciding to eat these children. It doesn't sound like he's alone in this. Am I missing?
No.
Something?
We'll get there.
Okay.
But there was no proof that there was a famine in China.
Okay, I guess that's where I was a little confused.
He just used that as an excuse. And
Cannibalism,
police investigated the letter.
Okay.
His story concerning Captain Davis and the famine in Hong Kong could not be verified.
Okay.
So, this was just
a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah, basically. The part of the letter concerning the murder of Grace, however, was found to be accurate in the description of the kidnapping and following events. Although it was impossible to confirm if Albert had in fact eaten parts of Grace's body.
God, could you imagine being a mother?
No, I could not.
And reading that letter?
No. Having it read to you because you're illiterate? No. The letter was delivered in an envelope that had a small hexagonal emblem with the letters NYPCBA, representing New York Private Chauffeurs Association. A janitor of the company told the police he had taken some of the stationery home but left it in his room at 200 East 52nd Street when he moved out. The landlady of the rooming house said Albert had checked in and out of that room a few days earlier. She said that Albert's son sent him money, and he asked her to hold his check for him. William F. King, the chief investigator for the case, waited outside the room for Albert to return. He agreed to go to headquarters for questioning. Albert made no attempt to deny the murder of Grace Budd, saying that he meant to kill her brother, Edward. Albert told police that it never entered his head to rape the girl, but later told his attorney that while kneeling on Grace's chest and strangling her, he had 2 involuntary ejaculations. This information was used at the trial to make the claim that kidnapping was sexually motivated, which caused there to be no mention of cannibalism.
What, so they could only, get him on one?
I guess so. So they just charged him with the kidnapping and sexual motivation and then didn't talk about the cannibalism.
Oh my God.
After his arrest is when police discovered the other crimes that he had committed. One was during the night of July 14th, 1924. 9-year-old Francis McDonald was reported missing after he failed to return home after playing catch with friends in Port Richmond, Staten Island. A search was organized and his body was found hanging by a tree in a wooded area near his home. He had been sexually assaulted and strangled with his suspenders. According to an autopsy, McDonald had also suffered extensive lacerations to his legs and abdomen, and his left hamstring had almost been entirely stripped of flesh. Albert refused to claim responsibility for this, but later stated he intended to castrate the boy but fled when he heard someone approaching the area. McDonald's friends told police that he was taken by an elderly man with a gray mustache. A neighbor also told police they saw a boy with a similar-looking man walking along a grassy path near the woods. McDonald's mother even said she saw the same man earlier that day, stating, quote, "He came shuffling down the street, mumbling to himself and making queer motions with his hands. I saw thick gray hair in his drooping gray mustache. Everything about him seemed faded and gray." The descriptions resulted in the mysterious stranger becoming known as the Gray Man. Another was on February 11, 1927. 3-year-old Billy Beaton and his 12-year-old brother were playing in the apartment hallway in Brooklyn with another child, 4-year-old Billy Gaffney. When the 12-year-old boy left the apartment, both younger boys disappeared. Billy Beaton was later found on the roof of the apartments, and when asked about Billy Gaffney, he stated, quote, "The boogeyman took him," unquote.
The child said that?
Yes. Billy Gaffney was never recovered. Initially a complete different killer, a totally different serial killer, Peter Kudwinski, maybe not saying that right, he was suspected in Billy Gaffney's murder. Then a motorman on a Brooklyn trolley saw the picture of Albert Fish in the newspaper and identified him as the old man who he saw February 11th of 1927. The old man had been trying to quiet the little boy sitting with him on the trolley. The boy was not wearing a jacket and was crying for his mother and was dragged by the man off the trolley. Detectives were able to find out that Albert was employed as a house painter by a Brooklyn real estate company during the time, and that the day of Billy's disappearance, he was working at a location a few miles from where the abduction took place. Albert stated the following in a letter to his attorney. "I brought him to the Riker Avenue dumps. There is a house that stands alone, not far from where I took him. I took the G-boy there, stripped him naked and tied his hands and feet and gagged him with a piece of dirty rag I picked out of the dump. Then I burned his clothes, threw his shoes in the dump. Then I walked back and took trolley to 59th Street at 2 a.m. and walked home from there. Next day, about 2 p.m., I took tools, a good heavy cat of nails, homemade, short handle, cut one of my belts in half and slit these half-inch 6 strips about 8 inches long. I whipped his bare behind till the blood ran from his legs. I cut off his ears, nose, and slit his mouth from ear to ear, gouged out his eyes. He was dead then. I stuck the knife in his belly and held my mouth to his body and drank his blood. I picked up 4 old potato sacks and gathered a pile of stones. Then I cut him up. I had a grip with me. I put his nose, ears, and a few slices of his belly in the grip. Then I cut him through the middle of his body, just below the belly button. Then through his legs about 2 inches below his behind. I put this in my grip with a lot of paper. I cut off the head, feet, arms, hands, and the legs below the knee. This I put in sacks weighed with stones, tied the ends, and threw them into the pools of slimy water you will see along the road going to North Beach. Water is 3 to 4 foot deep. They sank at once. I came home with my meat. I had the front of his body I liked best, his monkey and peewees, and a nice fat behind to roast in the oven and eat. I made a stew out of his ears, nose, pieces of his face, and belly. I put onions, carrots, turnips, celery, salt, and pepper. It was good. Then I split the cheeks of his behind open, cut off his monkey and peewees, and washed them first. I put strips of the bacon on each cheek of his behind and put it in the oven. Then I picked 4 onions when the meat had roasted about 1/4 of an hour. I poured about a pound of water over it for gravy and put in the onions. At frequent intervals, I basted his behind with a wooden spoon, so the meat would be nice and juicy. In about 2 hours, it was nice and brown, cooked through. I never ate any roast turkey that tasted half as good as his sweet fat behind did. I ate every bit of that meat in about 4 days. His little monkey was as sweet as a nut, but his peewees I could not chew, threw them in the toilet.
Oh my God. He wrote that to his attorney?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I told y'all this was rough.
I don't understand how the man is still walking around at this point if he's just willingly throwing all of this information at an attorney.
Well, and he's arrested at this time, but Bill Gaffney's mother, Elizabeth, visited Albert in Sing Sing, accompanied by Detective King.
Okay, these are things that he's writing after the arrest happened.
Yes.
This is not real time.
No. He got arrested.
In the beginning of your story when he went to Sing Sing. Okay.
Yes.
He has not gotten out of Sing Sing.
No.
They're now connecting all of these murders and stuff like that. Okay.
Yes.
I'm with you in your timeline
Yes,
now.
after he had gotten arrested, he admitted to these murders.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes more sense. I mean, it's still just as disgusting, but
yes.
it makes more sense. He's already in prison at this point.
Yes. Bill Gaffney's mother, Elizabeth, visited Albert in Sing Sing, accompanied by Detective King and 2 other men. She wanted to ask him about her son's death, but Albert refused to speak to her. Albert began to weep and asked to be left alone. After 2 hours of asking him questions through the lawyer, Elizabeth gave up. She's still unconvinced that Albert killed her son. Albert's trial for the murder of Grace Budd began on March 11, 1935, in White Plains, New York. Frederick P. Close was the judge, and Chief Assistant District Attorney Albert F. Gallagher was the prosecuting attorney. The trial lasted for 10 days. Albert pleaded insanity and claimed to have heard voices from God telling him to kill children. Several psychiatrists testified about Albert's fetishes, which included 12 different horrible, disgusting kinds that I don't even want to list out because this episode has already been, I don't know, dark, disturbing, vile.
All of the things.
Yes, all of the above. But it was literally, the research listed out 12 different fetishes that have names that they were saying Albert has.
Oh my gosh.
James Dempsey, who was Albert's defense counsel, stated that Albert was a psychiatric phenomenon, and that nowhere in legal or medical records was there another person who had so many sexual abnormalities. One expert witness, who was a psychiatrist with an emphasis on child development, explained that with Albert's obsession with religion and his preoccupation with the biblical story of Abraham and Isaac, which is Genesis 22:1 through 24, that Albert believed that equally sacrificing a boy would be amends for his own sins, and that even the act itself was wrong. Angels would prevent it if God did not approve.
Oh my God. This guy's a psychopath.
Yes. After many, many cross witnesses and questions to other psychiatrists, some saying that Albert was abnormal but sane, others saying that he was insane, the court called on Mary Nicholas, Albert's 17-year-old stepdaughter. She proceeded to tell the court how Albert taught her and her siblings several games involving overtones of masochism, the tendency to derive pleasure, especially sexual gratification, from one's own pain or humiliation, and child molestation. None of the jurors doubted that Albert was insane, but as Lowen later explained, they felt he should be executed anyway.
I have to agree.
They found him to be sane and guilty, so the judge sentenced Albert Fish to death by electrocution.
Good.
Albert arrived at the prison in March of 1935 and was executed on January 16, 1936. He entered the chamber at 11:06 p.m. and was pronounced dead 3 minutes later. He was buried in the Sing Sing prison cemetery. It reported that Albert helped the executioner by putting the electrodes on his body, and his last words were, quote, "I don't even know why I'm here," unquote. According to one witness at the execution, it took 2 jolts before Albert died, creating a rumor that the apparatus was short-circuited by the needles that Albert had inserted into his body.
Oh my gosh.
Of course, this was just a rumor and was clearly regarded.
Right.
At a meeting with reporters after the execution, Albert's lawyer, James Dempsey, revealed that he had Albert's final statements. There were several pages of handwritten note he had written hours before his death. When hounded by journalists to reveal the notes, James refused and said, quote, "I will never show it to anyone. It's the most filthy string of obscenities that I've ever read," unquote. Albert Fish was known for 3 victims, but is suspected of 5 more. Emma Richardson, Yetta Albermit, Robin Jane Liu, Mary Ellen O'Connor, and Benjamin Collings. And that is the story of Albert Fish. I did not go into full detail of this story.
I'm surprised that
because I could not.
No.
Now, when I do my research, I read multiple stories and websites and everything. You guys, I read 2 on this one, and I could not.
Oh my God.
I could not. I got the gist of it. And I even texted you when I was doing this research.
You did, yes.
And was like, this is rough. Like, I feel like we've done some rough cases, but just the detail and the whole writing the letters, just...
Yeah, the information that he's just, like, willingly providing.
Sending to a victim's family.
It's terrible. I mean, that's the worst of the worst.
I mean, they're all bad, but this was just... It was rough. I don't know if it's because we hadn't done a dark one in a while.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've really touched on, like, a dark case.
But, Jennifer, I hope that I did it justice.
Shoo!
If there's a story you've heard that we haven't done, bring it on.
Yeah,
I'll do it again and shout you out.
Yeah, like I said, she sent us a handful of cases, and she seems to be, like, staying super up to date with all of, like, the newer cases too that are kind of starting to pop up. Definitely keep tagging us. Definitely keep letting us know what you guys are reading and what you guys want us to cover. That one was...
It was a doozy.
A lot. Woo!
It was just, like I said, the details.
Yeah, that he was just so willingly providing.
Yeah. I think we all had enough.
Okay, we've got to end this episode. We've got to get out of here. We've got to stop. Jennifer, we hope that you enjoyed your episode of Albert Fish. We also hope that the rest of our freaky family enjoyed this episode. We will talk to you guys in a couple of weeks.
Bye.
Bye. You can join our freaky family both on Instagram and Facebook and find all of the featured photos from this episode at Sips of Crime.
Check out our website, www.sipsofcrime.com. There you can get to know a little about us and stay up to date with our monthly newsletter. We love connecting with our listeners and enjoy sharing your personal true crime, paranormal, or just downright funny stories. So submit those through the form provided on the website.
You can also help us grow our freaky family by sharing the podcast with others. And of course, let's not forget rocking our merch.
Thanks for listening.
Stay alive.